Thanks very much, Bruxy. That's absolutely perfect words for what we're going through as a denomination. And so, what a wonderful challenge, but also words of encouragement for us as the day goes on. Thank you very much. Let's thank Bruxy for his time this morning. Also, it should be noted that we want to thank Max Canada for the breakfast. If you partook in the good food that's out there, they sponsored that and provided that, and so we thank them for that as well. Few words of documents you need for this morning. So I trust that you have with you your discernment book. Will kind of be our guideposts throughout the day. If you're someone who uses Twitter, you can follow along and comment and retweet this gathering. Look for @ExtendThePeace, #MakeDisciples. And there I have here Wi-Fi name and password with a question mark. I'm pretty sure that the password is not question mark. So does somebody have that? There's no password. Okay. Also, Arlie Clausen and Susan Bender are available as listening committee. They're members of the Executive Council, and they'd be happy to receive your comments or questions as the day goes on. You can search them out. Also want to comment that floor privileges are extended to all our guests, but note that the voting portion is reserved for registered delegates from full member congregations and from emerging congregations. Church plants exploring membership in MCEC will be able to vote when they become full members. Churches are allowed 3 delegate votes. Congregations larger than 150 members are permitted an additional delegate for every 50 members beyond the initial 150. And we are grateful that our spiritual directors are providing prayer support for this weekend. A special thanks to each of them for serving us in this way. And the prayer room is kind of right behind us in room 30 here. If you follow the hallway around, you can find it there. Comment on how we communicate. You'll notice in page 4 in the discernment document, it highlights what the expectations are for communication from the floor and with each other. And also want to note that Sam Steiner is our parliamentarian, and if we need clarification on any of our processes. So at this time, I'll call on Brent Schrett for some further announcements.
Thank you, Paul. If you go to page 3 and 4 of your discernment documents, you'll find some answers to some practical questions, from emergency medical support to how to share your offering. If you can't find answers to your questions, find someone with a red apron or a member of MCEC staff. We'd be happy to help. The prayer room, as Paul mentioned, is where spiritual directors are praying, but it's available for you as well. If you wish to take some time to pray, just go out that door and come along this wall. It's right about there. We have a book table this year with books many of the books are for Real Learning Community, several books which we're sending home with you. I'll tell you more about that later, but there are additional copies there as well, and Bruxy's book. Several of us have tickets for the Liebel dinner. David Martin, myself, Henry Pakow, as well as Matthew Bailey Dick has tickets for that event at the Anabaptist Learning Workshop table. That's all for now. Thanks.
You also would have received in your package a small booklet, which are ministry partners, and they're representatives from a number of different agencies. We introduced them to you last evening. You can find the listing in the partner directory. Please take the opportunity to connect with these people over the course of the day and learn how they can help support the ministry of your congregation. You'll also notice their tables kind of wrap around in the hallway as well if you want to see or speak to them individually. Also want to recognize the presence here of all the MCEC staff. If you look on page 54 of your discernment documents, you'll find the listing there. I won't embarrass them or take the time to go through all of their names, but you'll see that they are a very important part of certainly the work that we do. They live and breathe the work of the church every day at the office and are a tremendous support to the many different committees and certainly a very big support in my role as moderator. So please thank them when you get a chance throughout the weekend. So at this time, I'm going to call on Brian Kwan to introduce the Executive Council members.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce you to our Executive Council. And you can identify the Executive Council here by the red name tags or the black lanyard that we're wearing. And I'd like the Executive Council, if you're here, to stand up so we can identify and to thank you. They work on your behalf, and if you see them today, please thank them for the work that they do. And you can also refer to your discernment document on page 19. So if you see them today, just give thanks to them.
At this time, I'll call Terry Keller forward, the secretary, to highlight minutes from the last annual meeting.
Good morning. The minutes from last year's annual church gathering can be found in your assignment guidebook on pages 12 through 18. And there's a motion listed for approval of these minutes that can be found on page 11, motion number 3, as follows. On behalf of the Executive Council, I move that we accept the minutes of the 29th annual meeting of Mennonite Church Eastern Canada, held April 29th and 30th, 2016.
So as I mentioned last evening, we'll be looking for a seconder for a number of motions here today. If you could stand and state your name and the congregation from which you're from so that it can help the minute takers record that. So I'm looking for a seconder for the motion that's been brought forward. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or discussions about the minutes? And you can make your way to the 2 microphones, please. Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote for the motion that's been presented and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. All right, slate of officers. So at this time, I'll call on Jeff Taylor to come forward.
Executive Council actions.
No, I've got it. Oh, did I miss that? Sorry. Yes, thanks, Terry. No wonder you were still standing here. All right, so I'll call on Terry for the Executive Council actions, ratifying.
So also in your discernment guide on pages 20 and 21, you will find the Executive Council actions, a summary of them that have taken place over the past year from April of last year through this year, and a motion for the approval of those actions, your support of those actions, also is number 4, found on page 11, and it reads as follows. On behalf of the Executive Council, I move that we approve all actions taken by the MCEC Executive Council for the year May 2016 to April 2017. Okay.
So again, a seconder for the motion that Terry has brought forward. Sue Steiner? Yep, Sue Steiner. If I'm squinting, it's just kind of, I'm not used to yet these lights kind of blasting down when trying to pick out faces in the crowd, so my apologies on that. Are there any questions or discussion around the Executive Council actions that are listed on page 20 and 21? All right, seeing none, I'll ask for the vote for the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, Terry. So now I'll call on Jeff Taylor with the gift discernment and the slate of officers.
And indeed, it's my pleasure to be the chair of that group. I'm the person that you try to find when you want to rat somebody out as a person who has gifts that we need to call upon in our various ministries. Another way to do that is to speak to moderator Paul or our executive minister, or to simply call the MCC office, and Joan will make sure I get that information. Friends, the slate of nominees which the 6 members of the gift discernment team present to you today represent the collective wisdom of the dozens of people who have given us suggestions and responded to our call for wisdom. We've discreetly made kind inquiries as to the appropriate giftedness of each of these people to the task to which we now ask you to call them. We've had conversations with the chairs of our commissions, committees, and partner boards, and we've met with MCEC senior staff to be better educated about the needs of MCEC ministries. And we've prayed for wisdom in our asking and searching. Not everyone who was asked gave us a yes. Some were wise enough to give us a holy no, so that we'd be spurred on to a more creative search. Not every person presented to you today is the first person to be asked, but we have come to believe that they are the right people to present to you. And later today we'll ask you to affirm this slate. It appears on page 22, but of course I have updated information. So you can follow along the slate on page 22, but I'm going to give you the real one here verbally. And that's not going to be projected because that one also would be behind. So you'll just have to trust me. So first, nominations for the Executive Council. We've asked Lloyd Redekop to continue to serve as the chair of the Administrative and Financial Services Council for one additional year, which means that he would then also serve on the Executive Council for one executive year, or for one more year. Then new to the Executive Council, we are nominating J.D. Penner from the Toronto United Mennonite and Randall Newdorf from the Commons in Hamilton. To the Administrative and Financial Services Council, the only nomination is Lloyd Redekop, I've just mentioned. To our Leadership Council, two nominations, one returning, Jessica Regehr-Rempel to return for a second term, and a new nomination, and pardon me if I mispronounce anybody's names, by all means correct me, I'm happy to have that done. Karen Scheel as a new nominee to the Leadership Council. The Missions Council, one returning nomination, Tim Wagler, and a new nominee for the Missions Council, Rebecca Reich. The Gift Discernment Committee is actually appointed by the executive, so we don't have nominations to offer you, but I'll let you know that they've already received a yes from Gladys Bender from Steinman Mennonite, and I hear there's another person considering we won't out them right now. And then to our boards of various partner boards, we send representatives, and we have nominees for some of those as well. For the Board of Directors of the Rockaway Mennonite Collegiate, we are nominating Chanel Cressman from Breslau, and she is actually just completing a one-year term for somebody else, but she's offered to do that. And then a new nominee in John Clausen from East Zora. To the Canadian Multi-Faith Federation Board, Susan Kennel Harrison, now from Windsor. To the Conrad Grable University College Board, Barb Smith Morrison from Bloomingdale, and Carol Ringer from Danforth. We are still looking for a nominee. We have a vacancy for the Detweiler Meeting House Board of Directors. That vacancy is entirely my fault for noticing it much too late. I'm sure we will find somebody. So those are the nominees that I'm sorry. I guess I should tell you about the nominees that we are suggesting for the recently called October special meeting of Mennonite Church Canada. I don't think this is, I'm not sure if you actually have these printed, so I suppose I better tell you who they are. So first of all, going whether you want them to or not are the moderator, the executive minister, and Henry Petkow as well. And then we are nominating Randall Newdorf, Arlie Clausen, Emily Rempel, Annalie Lepp-Thiessen, Steve Drudge, Craig Frere, myself, Susan Bender, and Sharon Lamont. And I believe, oh yes, the Ontario Mennonite Music Camp, one nomination there to return for just one more year. She's promised us that, maybe we'll get more. Carolyn Strathdy, And I believe that concludes our list of nominees for this year. And if I'm right, Paul, we affirm this group later today.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks very much, Jeff, for all the hard work that your Gift Discernment Committee does. And I'm sure there's many phone calls and many invites. And we are thankful for those who say yes. And like you said, we're also thankful for those who prayerfully consider but then decide to say no. So we look forward to their participation in the future. At this time, I'll call on Henry Petkow, our area church minister, and Dave Martin, the executive minister, for an update on some of the MCEC initiatives that are underway.
With me is Myrna Miller-Dick, chair of Leadership Council. Our scripture story this morning and Bruxy's message reminded us of the challenge of knowing what to hold on to and what to let go of the season that we're in. And it feels to me something like the weather today, perhaps. Is this really spring or is it fall? It feels like fall. Are things coming to life or are they dying? And sometimes when we look at the church, it poses the same question. And there is much that we perhaps are challenged to let go of, and there is much promise. Things yet unrevealed that in God's season will be revealed to us. And so I want to draw your attention, first of all, if you would turn to pages 48 and 49, the transitions in ministry. And begin actually with page 49, the list there of folks who have concluded their assignments. And again, this is in the past fiscal year, February 1 to January 31 of this year. And a note that Hans Peters, Jane Finch Faith Community should be added to that list. Our apologies for that oversight. So there are more than 24 transitions listed there from the past year. And 15 of those folks are not currently in ministry or continuing in ministry. That's an indication of the kinds of transitions, the time that we're living in. And there are multiple reasons for that. And some of them have to do with personal reasons, but many also with the changes in the life and ministry and mission of the church. Challenging times, to be sure. What is yet to be revealed in new ways of being church and being in ministry. And so we're grateful for, if you look at page 48, and among the placements there of the 16 that are listed there, 7 folks are new to ministry or to Mennonite Church Eastern Canada. And we're grateful that God continues to call and people continue to respond to that call to ministry. And so turning to pages 50 and 51, the listing of new ministers. I believe they will also appear on the screen. If not, then follow along in your report book. And I will ask these persons to stand where you are, please, if you are here, and be identified in that way, at least to the folks close to you. Alicia Bueller, spiritual caregiver in Kitchener-Waterloo, member at Sterling Avenue Mennonite Church. Doug and Jody Hatlam are not here today. Jody's father died earlier this week, and they are attending to those family matters as they say farewell to Jody's father. And so we want to offer our prayers for them during this time as well. Ernie Harris is here, pastor of community development and outreach at Nairn Mennonite Church. David Lewis, interim minister at Niagara United Mennonite Church, is not present with us, as I understand. Mario Marchand is here. Mario from the a church planter in Montreal, the Ichthus group there, the congregation there. Margaret Nally, a community minister in Kitchener-Waterloo, Herb Street Mennonite Church and House Church, is not able to be with us. Len Rempel is here, a minister at St. Agatha Mennonite Church. Jessica Risa Rempel, a pastor with Pastors in Exile, PI, and also at Sterling Avenue Mennonite Church. And you will see her with a buggy or stroller in tow and a lovely young daughter. Congratulations, Jessica. Jonathan Sealing, Associate Minister of Family Ministries, Vineland United Mennonite Church. I've seen him here somewhere as well. And yes, and Nick Sherman. Nick, are you here? Youth pastor at over there, St. Catherine's United Mennonite Church. So I would ask those of you, those whom I named and who are here, please stand again. Please stand. That means now. Thank you. And yes, show your support and blessing to them. Thank you. Remain standing. Thank you. Remain standing. And now I invite others who are in ministry, in various forms of ministry in Mennonite Church, Eastern Canada. Please stand with them. Folks, if you're a minister, don't be afraid to be identified. It's nothing to be ashamed of. God bless you. Yes, these are ministers among us here in Mennonite Church, Eastern Canada. Many called. Please remain standing. It's not such a hard thing to do. And I'm going to invite the rest of you to stand, put a hand on the person close to you or folks around you so that we extend a hand of blessing to each of these. And I'll ask Myrna to lead us in a prayer of blessing, please.
Let us join together in prayer. God, to be called to be a pastor is not an easy calling, but it is a wonderful calling. So thank you for calling us. Thank you for calling pastors who have been preaching for decades and for others who are just beginning. You have called and gifted pastors with creativity, with passion, and with a deep love of your kingdom. You have graced us with your mercy. You have graced us with your love. But the task can be a heavy one. We are called to lead the church into an uncertain future. We are called to offer inspiring worship, to care for the sick, to disciple the young and the old, to be engaged with the needs of our congregations and our neighbors and the world. We are called to so many tasks, and sometimes the weight of the responsibility is heavy, the way forward uncertain. So pour out your blessing, pour out your spirit on these your servants. Bless them with confidence rooted in humility. Bless them with wisdom, with the ability to see the big picture while tending to many details. Bless them with joy, with laughter and good friends. Bless each one with all that they need. May they faithfully serve you, O God of our salvation. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Morning. I want to share with you an update in terms of congregational resourcing. Picking up on Henry's image of changing seasons, this is indeed a time of change. Our society about us is changing. The church is changing. Congregations are changing. God is calling us into new territory, into new planting. MC Canada is in a time of change and transition. So all about us, we are looking at change and how do we adapt. And so at MCEC, we are trying to do our best to connect with this season of change and help you as congregations adapt to these changing times and find the resources you need. So at this point in time, just to give you a few quick updates on some things that we're doing. If you go to a workshop this afternoon or this morning, you will hear about the new assessment tool that we have commissioned for development. We have taken some of the legacy dollars and have been working with L3, formerly Associates Resourcing the Church, ARC, to put together a tool that helps you as congregations to be more intentional about reflecting on your ministry. Who are you? Where is God calling you? And how might we think more intentionally about this? The tool invites you to reflect on 10 different themes of ministry and congregational health. It focuses on engagement of leadership and congregational members as well. And we're at the point of piloting this thing. We want to thank the Simon Mennonite Church for being a part of that pilot project. We have another congregation as well on the way. And as we keep working at this, we want to keep extending it as we fine-tune it. So stay tuned, stay connected, and if you go to the workshop, find out a bit more. You're going to hear a lot as well this weekend about relearning community. We're introduced to a number of stories last night. Relearning community is, again, another life or legacy initiative. We've had several years of experience with it now, and we're moving in the direction of saying this is one of the key places of congregational resourcing that we want to attend to with our congregations. As you will hear, this is an initiative that helps us be more intentional about reflecting on our faith and making disciples within the congregation, but also beyond the congregation. What does it mean to share our faith inside our faith community? What does it mean to share our faith outside our faith community? So I encourage you to listen carefully this weekend and ask, what might this mean for my congregation? Anabaptist Learning Workshop. In collaboration with Conor Grable University College, MCEC is offering learning and engagement opportunities for you and your congregation. Again, in part sponsored both out of your budget givings, but also out of life initiatives as well. Check out the website for all the different things. Matthew Bailey Dick is our key coordinator here, works closely with Henry and a support group to ask, what do our congregations need? So be sure you look at those offerings and make good use of them. And there's also a certificate available if you complete a number of those different pieces. We invited you to bring a truck to annual church gathering this year, or maybe at least a station wagon or a van, because we're sending so much material back with you. And one of these important pieces is Sacred Trust. This is the material that you may have seen online. We want to thank Carol Penner for her good work. This is something that has come out of our concern about creating health in our congregations and building prevention and awareness around sexual abuse in our congregations. A very significant piece, wonderful piece of work for small groups, study groups, Christian education time on a Sunday morning, wherever you might use it. Stories that are real life stories that help us engage this very important issue. So I encourage you to take this back, make sure it gets into every mailbox, make sure you find ways to use it in the congregation. Let's build strong, healthy congregations in this regard. Also want you to be aware of a new staff component that we have introduced at MCEC. Liz Weber, who is on staff, has been commissioned for a part of her time to be coordinator of youth leaders, trying to give additional focus beyond what we do at the programming levels. The programming pieces for youth continue. For instance, Yellow Trip happens spring 2018. Stay sharp on this. This is for young adults, a learning tour to the Middle East, but registration and prep begins this fall. So be sure the young adults in your community are aware of this. Be sure the kids know about the junior youth retreats, the Bible quizzing, the youth retreats in the winter, etc. We also have youth coaching and mentoring available for youth leaders. But in addition to that, we have set some staff time aside with Liz Weber to work at coordinating some of those youth leaders and helping them find the resources that they need for their ministry. And finally, be aware of the generosity workshop that is available for your congregation. You can speak to Regional Minister Al Rempel, contact our office. But this is an opportunity to engage. What does it mean to be a generous congregation? Lori Gunter-Reeser is someone who's put some work into this, and we can look at adapting a workshop for your congregation on how do you build a culture of generosity in your congregation. We want you as a congregation to be thriving, so you have the resources of generosity to thrive in ministry in your local level, but also have those dollars available to participate in what we all do together as a wider church. So in this time of transition, we invite your engagement with these pieces. We also invite your recommendations and suggestions on what is it that you as congregations need now to adapt to these changing times. So we invite your prayers for these initiatives and invite your engagement with them. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call your attention to pages 26 to 28 in your discernment documents, the future directions, discussions, and presentation. Just a few quick comments on the interim council's role. You'll see the interim council members listed on page 28. Mennonite Church Canada, as we move through after the decision to move in this new direction was struck, we felt that there needed to be some sort of a group that kind of led up that there was responsible for the overall leadership. That is the interim council, and you'll see the members listed there on page 28. Also want to recognize David Martin and Willard Metzger's role in the executive staff group, which you'll also see listed there. These are the key folks that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the work that's being done. And so I really want to say a big thank you to that executive staff group that continues to do just a tremendous amount of hours of work on this here. So at this time also, want to call on Keith Regehr. So the interim council, one of the first jobs that we determined we needed to do was to hire somebody who could be the point person for the change process. And so we interviewed a number of different candidates, and we landed on Keith Regehr from L3 Group, and have been really pleased with the amount of work and time that Keith has poured into the process. So I'm now going to call on Keith at this time to make the presentation on the future directions.
So I'm grateful to be here today. Grateful for the opportunity to talk about the future directions process with you. I'm particularly pleased to be here because you're my home family. I'm back from a tour of the other area church conferences, and so the flight yesterday was a good deal shorter than the other ones were. So, as Paul said, I'm the transition coordinator, and as I've crossed the country, I've introduced myself as a member of First Mennonite Church, which sits in Haudenosaunee territory, but it's complex land because before that it was Wendat and Anishinaabeg territory. So we're looking forward to your feedback later on the proposal that is available for us to look at. My presentation right now is to basically present don't you love it when your technology turns off on you? To give you a bit of background information about the proposal that's on the website, and to talk about where we're going right now. The feedback that we're going to be collecting later today is going to contribute to the work of preparing the final proposal that goes to Special Assembly in Winnipeg in October. We've already received significant feedback, 8 Emerging Voices Initiative workshops, 4 area church assemblies, 7 regional meetings from among MCEC congregations, numerous emails and feedback from some of the working groups speaking into the structure. And in addition, we're expecting to get reports back from the working groups in the next few weeks. But first, a metaphor. This is an aspen tree, singular. It looks like multiple trees, but it is a single organism, a single plant visible to us as multiple trees. Underground, these apparently individual trees are connected to a single root system. And one implication of that is incredible resilience. The removal of a single stalk does not put the entire tree at risk, even though there is damage. And even the removal of multiple stalks leaves the roots intact. Even fire leaves the roots intact. The tree survives, and within a year, new sprouts appear from the root system. I'm told that the aspens that were seemingly wiped out during the Fort McMurray wildfire a year ago are coming back. For me, this is a powerful metaphor for the church. Though, like all metaphors, it names a truth, but also hides many things. We are bound together at our roots. We look like multiple people, multiple congregations, multiple denominational groups, but we are a single church of Jesus Christ, locked into Jesus as our life, our source, our root, our ground. And as such, we have a profound resilience. We're able to come back from deep damage. And I see this regularly in the work I do walking with conflicted congregations. No matter the damage, there is always hope because of the root. And this metaphor works for me at multiple levels. The congregation, the regional church, the national church, and our global communion of Mennonite World Conference. Last year, I heard a story from Ryan Siemens, area church minister in Saskatchewan, who often takes his children with him when he speaks at congregations. One Sunday, Isaiah, his 5-year-old son, pointed to the wall and said, "Dad, they have the same sign as we do." And in response, Ryan talked about family. Anytime you are in a church with this sign, you are in a place with people who are your family. And that is true anywhere you are in Canada. That sign means family. We together here are people together. Those people, these people, you are my family. And I would add, you can even go into the US and you'll find the same sign, and they are your family. And I would add beyond that, when you travel the world to something over 50 countries, the sign may be different, but the churches and the people are your family. And with that framing, let me talk a little bit about future directions. Last summer in July, in Saskatoon, delegates approved the Future Directions Task Force report and addendum. And the process has been moving forward since then, developing a structure that's rooted in the principles in those documents. Working groups have also been at work developing approaches to various aspects of the church's work and ministry. And if you go to the Future Directions website, you will find a 25-page document that outlines what I'm going to talk about today in about the next 7 minutes. Your materials have an executive summary of that document, as well as a draft covenant for the new structure that will be, that the proposal is that that will be a covenant among the area churches. But first, a little bit of context. One recurring question is about why we are doing this. What's wrong with the old system? Why can't we just keep going as we are? The answer is in part that the church in the West, more broadly, is in the midst of what some experience as a crisis. I work in a large variety of congregations, and simple demographics tell the story. A healthy church will have a solid base of children, youth, young adults, middle-aged adults, older adults. Most congregations don't. I'm frequently in churches where the largest group by far is over 60 years of age, and maybe 3 children come up for Children's Story. Current statistics say that between 60 and 70% of young adults who grew up in the church will leave during the decade after high school and never come back. There are anecdotes to the contrary, and there's a part of me that feels really silly talking about that in this building. But this is one of the anecdotes to the contrary. But that's the average. 60 to 70% is the average, whether you were talking about mainline churches, evangelical churches, most mega churches, and Mennonites. Add to that the reality that my father had 6 siblings, I had 2, and my own children each have 1. Demographics are simply not helping us. And in the meantime, the broader culture has changed. It no longer supports the possibility of faith as it once did. And in a growing secular society, people no longer seek meaning in the experience of the transcendent. So they have no clue what it is that the church has to offer. Add to that fact that many in the millennial generation see institutions as the cause of the world's problems, where my parents' generation and my own generation tend to see institutions as the solution to the problems, a symbol. On the first day of each month, my parents cut 3 checks. Portage Avenue Mennonite Brethren Church, Mennonite Brethren Missions, and Mennonite Central Committee. Fewer and fewer people express that kind of institutional loyalty in their giving. And in that context, the things we used to do to grow the church don't work as well, except in a few instances. But in most cases, if you build it, they will not come. And that means there needs to be change, and change is painful. But not responding to the changes around us, not getting ahead of the curve to the extent possible, would mean waiting until it's too late. There are voices that have said that the future directions process is killing the church, but I would beg to differ. The Future Directions process is a response of love for the church. It comes from a deep desire to see the church thrive, to flourish in the midst of the rapid changes around us. It is looking to the future, it is looking the future in the face and asking, what is God calling us to in this time and in this context? One more thing I would want to add. I want to be clear that the structure is not being changed for the sake of changing structure. Rather, structure is always a container. It is a container that is meant to help us to live our vision. It's a container that helps us to live out God's calling to us as communities of grace, joy, and peace, as communities that are conduits for God's healing and hope. So I want to highlight 5 emphases. First, vision. Several times we have heard a complaint about a lack of vision in the Future Directions process. And my understanding is that no new vision statement was articulated, so we have a perfectly good one from 1995. We're still learning how to live it out. And it's one that I find exciting. God calls us to be followers of Jesus Christ, and by the power of the Holy Spirit, to grow as communities of grace, joy, and peace, so that God's healing and hope flow through us to the world. I recently read this to somebody who grew up in the church and is one of those who has left it. And I read this statement to her, and she said, "Oh my, that's gorgeous. That's the kind of place I would want to be." So that statement energizes me, and it energizes the Future Directions process. Second, a focus on the vitality of congregations. This for me is a second part of the vision. The Future Directions report and addendum spoke of an emphasis on the congregation as the primary place of ministry, mission, and worship. The local congregation is the place where we have our first connection to church. It's the place where we learn to live as followers of Jesus. It's the place where we learn together how to live as a community of faith. It's the place where we learn to engage in mission. It's the place where we raise our children to be followers of Jesus. It's the place where we gather for our most frequent experiences of worship. The vision of strengthening congregations and their leaders to be those kinds of places drives the Future Directions process. We live in times of change for the church. The era of congregational strength of the 60s is over, and the culture has changed too much for many people to even understand why faith makes sense. And in that context, we need to have our best to offer their leadership skills, and we need opportunities for leaders to gather and to support each other to be provided resources. And this is true for both lay and ordained leaders. And this need also drives the Future Directions process. Third, the vitality of regional churches. Congregations covenant together to form regional churches for a variety of purposes: learning, strengthening each other, shared mission and ministry, to be part of something bigger, and to be part of a larger family. And a crucial part of the work of the regional church is strengthening congregations, supporting congregations and their leaders in being communities of healing and hope. One implication of that is financial. Regional churches have differing levels of financial resources. And this little piece sounds very different here than it does in Alberta, for the obvious reasons. So we are building a model to ensure that each regional church has the financial resources needed to play their role. Four, the vitality of the national church. Regional churches covenant together to form the national church for a variety of purposes: learning, strengthening each other, shared mission and ministry, to be part of something bigger, to be part of a larger family. And a crucial role of the national church is working together as regional churches to strengthen local congregations. And an important point here is that the national church does not exist apart from the partnerships of the regional churches, in the same way that MCEC does not exist apart from the partnership of you as congregations. A crucial part of the national role is building a sense of us as Mennonites having a national peoplehood. There are several parts of the Future Directions report and addendum that point in that direction. One is the Congregation of Ministerial Leadership that's envisioned as being a place for regular gatherings of congregational leaders, both lay and ordained. And another is a shift to the holding of annual gatherings of the church for worship and learning at study conferences. And other ideas on how to do this are being developed by a working group. All of that has structural implications. I'm going to start by acknowledging that the next 3 slides may be meaningless to those sitting in the back. Lovely diagrams, wrong way of presenting them. Although I will say these are the biggest screens I've had to work with so far, so they may work. So the biggest shift is that national priorities are shaped by the regional churches working together. This means that the national church is essentially a partnership of the regional churches. And it means that national priorities will need to be an item on the agenda for regional church boards and delegate sessions. Given that there is greater representation of congregations at regional church meetings than has historically been the case at national delegate assemblies, we actually expect there to be more engagement with national agenda. An example. 46 MCEC congregations had delegates in Saskatoon last summer. Twice that number have delegates here today. And that pattern is consistent across the country. In Alberta, it was 50% at MC Canada Assembly in Saskatoon, and everybody was at their area church gathering. One thing that has become clear is that in order to maximize delegate engagement with national questions, they have to be talked about here at the regional church gatherings. Another shift is in the area of governance, and this represents a significant shift that flows from the change in membership in Mennonite Church Canada. Currently, the 5 area churches are members of MC Canada, and each congregation that is a member of an area church is also a member of Mennonite Church Canada. In the new structure that's proposed, only the regional churches will be members of Mennonite Church Canada, and congregations will only be members of their regional churches. Congregations elect their regional church boards and moderators, and then the national board would be made up of the moderators of the 5 regional churches, plus additional members that are elected at the National Assembly. The other governance area is the structure of the delegate body. The proposal has Mennonite Church Canada delegate body made up of delegates from the regional churches only. It would involve all regional boards and all of their members, plus additional delegates appointed by the regional churches. And it's proposed that the meetings of the delegates will be tied to other national meetings, such as the Congregation of Ministerial Leadership or the study conferences, in order that non-delegates can be there for the delegate discussions and will have floor privileges and can speak to issues. And the 5th area I want to speak to is international witness. I want to start here with the fact that we are also part of a much larger family, the global family of Mennonite World Conference. I was at NWC meetings in February and was again inspired by the faithful witness of our brothers and sisters from around the world. I always find it hard to talk about this. Faithfulness in the face of overwhelming need in Zimbabwe. Faithfulness in the interreligious peace building in the majority Muslim country of Indonesia, and remarkable faithfulness in the midst of post-Christendom secular cultures and the collapses of the church in Europe. One of the things that flows from the Future Directions process is that international witness will be changing. And the change is driven by a number of factors. One of them is the growing maturity of the global church. One of them is financial constraints. And one of them is the desires of many congregations for hands-on engagement in mission around the world. What it will look like is not clear. There are some proposed ideas in the Future Directions Task Force and Addendum, and there was, shall we say, significant pushback in Saskatoon. The question of what witness will look like is currently with the working group that is developing a model. And there will be a concrete proposal for a model from that working group well in advance of assembly in October. So again, my 5 themes: vision, congregational vitality, regional church vitality, national church vitality with shifts in the governance structure, and international witness. And at that point, I'm going to quit talking. We're going to have some opportunity now for questions of clarification, and then this afternoon there will be significant opportunity for you to talk in small groups about the Future Directions process and for feedback.
Thanks, Keith. Yes, so as Keith mentioned, the time we have here for questions from the floor, I'd like to keep it on the 5 topics or any other types of questions you might have related to the presentation, but we will have some more extensive time for conversation in both a group setting and also from the floor later this afternoon. So if there's those who would want to make their way to the mic, I'd ask you to do so that you're prepared to ask that. And then there'll be Willard, myself, David, and Keith here. We'll do the best we can to answer. We may not have an answer for every question that's asked. Certainly thought Bruxy's challenge this morning was really appropriate, and for those who thought we might have seeded that message into him when he came, that wasn't the case. He kind of brought that himself. So I thought that was a really Holy Spirit moment there this morning, just to have a challenge to leave behind some things that are maybe hard to let go. So and at the same time enter into a new world with a healthy degree of fear and trepidation, but to know that God is with us. So. Seeing nobody making their way to the mic and seeing we're on a tight time schedule, I don't want to cut the legs out from under anybody who wants to ask a question. But again, we will have some broader discussion this afternoon. You'll notice in your agenda that we're now going to have a break. And then for those who signed up for workshops, Brent, do you want to come and give some instruction as to where they need to be and when they need to be there?
A number of logistical updates for you at this time. So we're going to leave from here and have a break until 11 o'clock. At 11, you're encouraged to go to your workshop of choice. The workshop will be 1 hour long. At noon, lunch will begin. Lunch is through here, as is the break that we'll be going to now. And then gathering music will begin at 12:45, and the afternoon session will begin at 1 o'clock. So we're sending you from here for a long period where you're out of this room. So a few logistical details. Your name tag is your meal ticket. If you haven't picked up your name badge, please do so now. If your name tag is left at the registration desk, we'll assume that you are absent and offer your meal ticket to a walk-in registrant. We've had a lot of walk-in registrants today, so we need to figure out how to get everybody lunch. So your meal ticket is your name badge. If you requested gluten-free, vegetarian, dairy, or dairy and gluten-free, those are in another area. Simply ask one of the servers. They can help you with that. Lunch is quite portable. It's a box lunch. There's lots of room to move around on this campus to stand or sit in different areas and have your lunch and share time with others, but you cannot bring food into 3 rooms. If the food cannot be in here, in the auditorium, or in the rec room, we ask you to break down the box so that it's collapsed and flat and fits into the recycle bins. There'll be lots of recycle bins around. And there are 4 special lunch meetings. You can see those on page 10 if you want to join any of those 3 groups, plus 1 additional one if you received a message from Brian Yancey. They have another, that's a 4th group that you might join. So the locations of all of the workshops will be on the screens for the next while. And then the locations of the lunch special meetings will be up on the screens later. So I know it's only 11:45, but we're going to sing Grace now. So I invite Jeff Taylor to lead us in that.
I believe we have the text for the screens of this hymn. Be present at our table now. Can we stand together and sing? This worship space requires you to give your neighbor your full voice to encourage them, okay? So don't be shy about singing. There's a couple different rhythms around for this one, so we'll do, can you give me any kind of an A flat would be great. A flat major would be the best, actually. There we go. So the rhythm we'll do is the one with the long notes in it. So, be present at our table. The long notes, okay? Here we go. Ta-da.